Yuri, you are an absolute idiot. Setsu was not the imposter. You're the worst Among Us player ever. SQ wagging her ass at you wasn't enough of a red flag for you? Dude literally chose the simp route and ended up dead. GG. But yes, Gnosia is finally here. Yes, the anime adaptation of Among Us. No, I actually kid. It's actually an adaptation of a video game of the same name, Gnosia. And honestly, it's a series that I had a lot of excitement for. This is on my top 10 list of most anticipated for the fall season. And it's really around the fact that, one, it looks like not really Among Us. It looks more like a They Are 11 situation where you have a bunch of people on a spaceship and there's a mole amongst them and they have to figure out who that mole is or they'll end up dead. That kind of concept there. Something I actually really do enjoy if done properly. And it looks like the video game that it's actually based off of has some really good scores, so that gives me a lot of hope that at least the story is going to be good here. Now, if the anime adaptation will nail that, I'm sure all the people that have played the game will be able to tell me in the comments down below, no, they're doing terrible, no, it looks like it's doing good, all that kind of stuff. But I was actually excited for this series. I've checked out the first episode of it, so let's just jump into my thoughts on it. Gnosia, or Gnosia, depending on how you want to pronounce it, opens up with our main character named Yuri. And Yuri has just woken up from some sort of sleep because they were in some recovery phase. And they're aboard the interstellar cruiser DQO. And immediately when they wake up, they're greeted by Setsu, who woke them up. Setsu asks Yuri if they understand, then immediately assumes that the learning system has failed as it's so antiquated, realizes very quickly that Yuri has lost their memories, then asks a very weird question. Do you think humanity should be erased from the universe? After Yuri gives them a little bit of a puzzled look, she apologizes and then quickly gets them up to speed. The ship is occupied by refugees from the planet Luan. And while they're on their way to the Alakosia system, it seems like some sort of problem occurred. And unfortunately for them, until that problem is resolved, they're not allowed to land on any planet. Before Setsu can explain anything else, Yuri is greeted by the rest of the occupants of the ship. We have SQ, Gina, and Ratio. It's at this point that Yuri finds out from these individuals bickering amongst themselves that they're looking for what they call a Gnosia. And with Yuri claiming that they have amnesia, it seems like a lot of suspicion is going towards them. Now, since Setsu actually believes that Yuri does have amnesia, she decides to request that the ship postpone their voting process. To which point, they all go to a cafe nearby, and they explain the situation to Yuri. That yes, during their travels from this planet to this other system, they were attacked by this alien force known as the Nose. And according to them, when these Nose come in contact with humans, they infect them, and those that get infected are known as Gnosia. The ship is equipped to be able to detect that a Gnosia is actually present, and standard protocol, they would typically self-destruct, but due to the fact that these are all refugees from another planet, the ship has come to an agreement with those on board that if they can figure out who the Gnosia is, they will hold off this self-destruction. Thus begins this process that they're actually going through. They're basically playing the Are You the Werewolf game, which essentially involves each of these individuals kind of sussing each other out until eventually they will come to a vote. Whoever gets voted as the possible Gnosia will end up getting cryogenically frozen, at which point if the ship doesn't detect the Gnosia, it'll know they actually froze it. However, if the ship detects it again, they know that they picked the wrong person and they'll have to go to a vote again. And why Yuri was just woken up is because they were injured during the initial attack of the Nose. With that explanation out of the way, they do a little bit of greeting. We have a couple of situations where people are trying to suss each other out before they go to a vote. At which point, everybody picks Ratio. They take him to the cryogenic sleeping chambers, where we find out that apparently cryogenic sleeping is something that is outdated at this point because there's been a lot of recorded cases of people not waking up from it. But they accept their fate, get frozen, and then sure enough, the Gnosia is not frozen. Again, to the Among Us reference there, Ratio was not the imposter. And this sucks that they picked the wrong person because they immediately have to go to warp speed. And during warp speed, the humans are actually in danger of the Gnosia because during that time, they lose consciousness while the Gnosia is able to attack them. Which, yes, sure enough happens. One of the occupants, Gina, ends up getting attacked. This leaves us with 3 more occupants of the ship. Yuri, who is our main character who just woke up from sleep. Setsu, who's ex-military, who is the one that actually woke up Yuri. And then the bubbly SQ. This puts Yuri, who's just woke up and is trying to figure out this whole situation, having to basically choose between the two of them. They've both kind of taken their side. They both believe that Yuri is not the Gnosia, while additionally both of them want to bring Yuri on their side to vote the other one out. And as Yuri goes up for the final vote, because this will be the final vote if they choose the wrong person, and Yuri ends up voting out Setsu, which leads Setsu to have to be frozen. Now, why Yuri chose this is because, yes, SQ whispered in his ear at some point, saying that the Gnosia loved to lie. And yes, when Yuri first woke up, Setsu asked things like, "Do you remember?" kind of implying the idea that they've known each other before. But later on, she claimed that they never met each other before. And the fact that she whispered in his ear that, do you think that all humanity should be wiped off the universe? This all kind of instilled a bunch of distrust that he has in Setsu. Well, as Setsu is going to go off to get cryogenically frozen, she asks for a brief moment with Yuri, at which point she hands over this cube to him. She says, "The person that gave this to me told me, doubt not, fear not, and know, knowledge will save all. Then said that with this item, you will have the power to transcend death." At which point she goes off and to be frozen, and SQ comes into the room and immediately says, "Are we going to have some fun until that bad end?" And yes, turns out to be the Gnosia. At which point Yuri wakes up and he's back at the point where, yes, Setsu woke them up. Thus starting over the whole process again, that he's stuck in some sort of infinite loop. What Setsu says is basically the beginning of this long journey to escape this place. And that's the gist of just episode 1. Yes, it was technically an extended first episode, so quite a bit of an episode here. But yes, I so far am really liking the show, and I think it's really around the fact that the way they've sort of set up the gimmick here, it isn't exactly what I was kind of expecting, and it does kind of leave the door open for this series to have a lot of little quirks to it. Yeah, the initial thought process I had here based on the PVs and everything was that this was going to be a spaceship full of 20 people, and one of them is a mole, and we have to go through this whole trial process over and over again, while the entire time we see characters that are so superly obvious that they're evil, and they end up not being the people that are actually the mole, while these other characters over here that are super nice and super bubbly and super innocent turn out to be the evil bad guy that is actually the mole. What they've sort of set up here is the idea that the No themselves essentially infect the human. Thus, who is actually going to be the mole could change every single time. So I'd imagine that now that he is reset, it could be somebody else besides SQ. And I do like the fact that the visuals for the theme song kind of gives a sense of, yeah, anybody can be it. It shows Rossio, and they got the evil face. It shows Gina, they have the evil face. Every single character has the evil face because anybody can be the actual Gnosia. They're built to lie. They are a doppelganger. They will infect somebody, and that person becomes the Gnosia. So anybody literally can be it. The next time he wakes up, he probably will feel bad that he betrayed Setsu, and he chose the wrong person, and I would literally have no doubt that in episode 2, Setsu's going to be the Gnosia. And he's going to think that he betrayed Setsu, and Setsu's going to be like, haha, I tricked you. I was the Gnosia all along. Now, yeah, the other quirk to this whole situation is that we have a live, die, repeat, all you need is kill situation here, where every single time the person dies, they reset back to the beginning of it again, and they'll keep going through this process. Which does kind of make me wonder, if he does end up getting frozen, does that mean he's pretty much screwed? He can't get voted out. If he gets voted out, that's literally game over, unless they die in that cryogenic sleep and they don't actually wake up from it. But the whole reset process is the most intriguing part about this, because it makes me kind of re-examine the entire episode. Because yes, based on how the episode ends with Setsu handing over this cube, thus implies that Setsu had this power to transcend death and was trying this over and over again. I would assume a lot of what Setsu said that instilled doubt upon Yuri, the do you think humanity should exist, the no, we've never met each other before, even though she's asking, do you remember? That stuff implies that she's been through this loop before, and she's trying to find out if Yuri may possibly get the cube at some point. That first question that she had, do you understand, I think is asking, do you understand the idea of escaping death, transcending death? So now that he has transcended death, and he's waking up again for the second time, he'll be able to tell her, yes, you gave me the cube, and she'll go, okay, good. But it does make me wonder, if she handed over the cube, does Setsu no longer transcend death? That's going to be the big question mark, because I think what's going to turn into this next time will be an idea of, now that he has the cube, the next death that Setsu has, she won't reset, and he'll be on his own. That she's been doing this entire time, looping over and over and over again, but the next time, that's it. Unless he hands the cube back over to her, he's on his own. The fact that Setsu's been doing resets also explains why she made that little comment after Gina had died. The idea that she's failed again. It does get a sense that, again, Setsu has been doing this for so long, trying to help everybody, and it's starting to get to her. Which would explain why she finally handed over to Yuri. I'm tired of doing this over and over again, and it does kind of beg the question why she was so willing to pass that off to Yuri, because I would assume handing that over to a Gnosia is probably a bad thing. Yes, it does kind of beg the question of why did this world have some sort of advanced technology to transcend death, but I'm not going to think too much on that stuff. I'm going to assume it's going to be some sort of alien technology that allows them to transcend death itself. Like I said, overall, it's a really good setup to, again, make this sort of Among Us, they were 11, who is the mole type of concept kind of interesting. And with a lot of the cast members they showed in the theme song, I'm assuming that every time he resets, it's probably going to have, different people in the room. Or possibly him getting woke up earlier than normal. That a lot of these other characters are going to be ones from, like, way earlier voting processes. I'm also kind of curious as to why the AI chose to leave them alive, because it says that typically it's immediate self-destruct. Because if this Gnosia infection does get to a planet, they're going to basically infest. It is a disease, basically. Every human it comes in contact with, it can infest. Now, I'd assume that they can't infest another person once they've been infested, that maybe only the Gnos themselves can infest a human to make a Gnosia. But why the ship itself allowed this makes me kind of sus to the ship. I don't know why for some reason, I'm just sus to the ship. And it does make me kind of curious as to why they wouldn't just have everybody frozen immediately. Yes, they do say that it is dangerous, that there is cases where you don't wake up, that some places have outlawed it. But for the sake of them being able to land the ship, why not? Everybody would be frozen at the gamble that they wouldn't wake up, but that alleviates people dying from the warp speed. It's like less people dying outside of it than inside of it. Now, the biggest pause that I have for this show right now, my biggest pause, and again, hopefully based on the fact that the game itself did so well, I'm assuming that's not the case here. One of the things I don't like about these Who is the Mole type of shows is that they'll typically have, like I joked about earlier, they'll have the character that's super bubbly, super nice, SQ, super nice, super bubbly, or super innocent. Like they're just like this doll of a person that just wouldn't harm a fly. And then at the very end, they start cackling because they tricked everybody and they have the big derpy faces and stuff like that. And it's always like these other characters that are like super mean, super crude, rough around the edges that end up being the people that are all innocent. I hope they don't rely on that too much. It seemed like they did it for the first scenario. Setsu is the ex-military, super reliable, does everything right, but then says like two things wrong and sets off Yuri. Whereas SQ is the super bubbly, super nice, super kind, even, yes, super flirty. I was like, it's gotta be SQ. It's gonna be SQ, isn't it? And sure enough, it's SQ. So hopefully now they got that out of their system. They won't rely on that too much. What makes these types of shows really good is when you see small signs, telltale signs, and they're not overly shown and emphasized too much, that you can piece together to later on go, I totally forgot that, or yeah, I remember I caught that right there. It's always on execution. Thankfully, because it's got a reset system here, they can try multiple things out, but I hope that they're clever with that and that they're not too stupid about it. Because in a lot of cases, it can turn one of those things where you're either overly emphasizing those that are too innocent and it ends up being them, or it's a trick. Essentially, respect the viewer, respect the reader, respect the person who is consuming the media, and don't keep pulling these kind of like, haha, tricked you kind of moments. It's always a mixed bag with these types of stories. So hopefully they pull it off. Visually, though, I really like it. I really like the character designs. I love the character designs. And it's super vibrant. I love the colors. They just absolutely pop. And the studio's doing a good job with it. Like, there's a decent amount of animation here. Yes, some of the, panning shots of the CGI is kind of a little rough. But I think what they're doing with it is really good. I really do like it. It's all coming down to this being easily one of my top 3 new shows this season so far, and I'm really looking forward to more. I'm pretty sure that I'll probably cover this on a weekly basis, so for people that are fans of the series and you want to get my horrible takes like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he thought it was that character, lol, that kind of stuff, I might be covering this on a weekly basis. This might end up being my Saturday show of the week, but we'll see though if there's enough to actually discuss in it, some really cool twists and turns and whatnot. But if it does turn out that way, I hope you guys will join me on a weekly basis on it. But that's my thoughts so far on Gnosia. Hopefully I didn't say Gnosis. I think I wanted to say Gnosis at some point. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button down below. If you like this content and you want to support channel more, become a member of the channel. Until next time, y'all take care.